let's do it. So I'll kick off. My name is Jag. Very grateful to Carleen, who I've got to spend a little bit of time with over the past month, because we're both part of Mercury Raise, yet another program of some description, helping founders do something. But anyway, I met Carleen, which is great. And Carleen, I just have so many, I'm, doing B2B sales, trying to close on pilots, and just want the kind of the narrative and kind of the style and kind of writing to contacts to kind of move things along, right? Like when you've got this top of the funnel and folks are taking months and months to get back to you, just want to get kind of really crisp in terms of being professional around asks and kind of updates. So would love your input on that. I'm going to pass it over to Tico. You're on mute, Tico. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it always happens to me. I mean, I'm always in mute when I'm supposed to talk and quite that, and vice versa. So my name is Héctor Adolfo Ituarte Perez. That's a very Latino name, so I just go by Tico because it's easier. And I'm originally from Mexico by way of Colombia for the past 3 years. I co-founded and run the business end for Ifir Football. We are a Web3 a blockchain-enabled company that develops video games, with our first product being a football platform aimed at the 1.8 billion football crazes in the world. And we're also spinning off into a B2B solution of game development as a service, specifically targeted at something like Carleen does, which is enrichment activities for youngsters. So it's really exciting to be here. Thank you so much.
We'll talk more as you move along, right?
Super. Danielle, do you want to go next? I know you've already did a quick intro, but what are you looking to get out of the program, out of this session?
Yeah, so we're being pulled in two different directions. The API route, which is to use our technology for other video conferencing platforms, and the app route, which is just companies that wants to use an app to solve their hybrid meeting headaches. So we'll just love to learn more about, which direction do we go to, because you got to stay focused as a startup. Can't really try to do everything at once, boil the ocean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Super. Carmi, do you want to go next?
Sure. Nice to meet everyone. Carleen and I just started chatting in FamTech. I am building On-Site Kids, which is on-site childcare centers specifically for frontline employees. So she's been helping me figure out how to turn a no into a yes, and I'm following her along.
Super. Zach, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure thing. Name's Zach. Carleen, thanks for hosting this and putting this on today. I already mentioned this to some other folks, but in the prop tech real estate space, worked in sort of consumer side for many, many years, spun out that business, currently working on a B2B data product. So it's a very new sales cycle. We're sort of focused on enterprise level customers, and both my co-founder and I don't have any expertise in that sales cycle. So just looking to glean as much information as I can today.
Yeah. This will be really good for you, Zach.
Perfect. Thank you.
Really, really good.
Super. Zed, you want to go next?
Zed,
Yeah, hi everybody.
he's one of my peeps.
Definitely. I am a co-founder of a company called LegalQ. We actually went through Techstars and Launch, so kind of both best of both worlds. And basically, our goal is to make access to legal services very simple. We have an app that you can use to connect to a lawyer for a free consultation. And Carleen and Pete, both on the call here, have been helping kind of with all things sales, but also just life. And I just want to help understand some of the better ways that we can be doing our B2B funnels. So thank you.
Amazing. Pete, you want to go next?
Pete.
Sure. Hi, Carleen. My name is Pete. I'm the founder of Chatter. We are a data connectivity and analytics platform for industrial machines, which is a fancy way of saying we connect the real world to the physical or to the software world and try to understand that. So our customers are mainly SMBs right now, but we also kind of work at the enterprise level with, actually, we just got our first FANG customer. Now, being able to be across that whole spectrum is a tough thing to manage, especially for a small company. So that's kind of our sales struggle. So yeah.
Amazing. And last but not least, Meredith.
Hi, my name is Meredith McAllister. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Marma. So we're a platform for nutrition during the birthing years. So whether that's fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and following. And we launched in the App Store earlier this year. Right now, we're really just doing direct to consumer and have some partnerships for that. But we really want to launch a B2B pipeline. So whether that's selling to employers or even insurance payers, obviously it's kind of, those are more in the healthcare world, but the first kind of chunk that we want to tackle with B2B sales would be employers. So as somebody had mentioned earlier, I don't have any experience in B2B sales, learning, drinking from the fire hose, but definitely want to learn more.
Yeah, this will be good for you too. And I have a lot of experience in that space. You know, PEOs, partnerships with people like Clio, those sorts of things, where you're part of a bigger thing would be an easy route for you to go. So we can have that conversation separately if you want.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll love that.
Super. Carleen, take it away. It's all yours.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes, no, maybe. Okay. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm gonna talk really fast because I was late. But we do also have a lot of stuff to cover. So, and I generally talk fast anyway. So no frills here. We're just gonna run through it. So let me start with a little bit of context, just so that we're all starting from the same place. So first and foremost, this is about this is about the tactical ways in which we get deals closed in B2B, right? I feel like I get asked these same questions all the time, and there really isn't anybody talking about it. They're talking about sales methodologies, they're talking about how to sell, how to identify. This is really about the steps and stages that you are going to have to be aware of to get a deal closed, because it is really, really different than B2C. And it's also really, really complicated. We're also talking about real deals only. So this is not about, unqualified BDR, lead gen, top of funnel stuff. These are things that you believe have enough legs, that are really have a high likelihood of closing within a quarter, a month, a year, or whatever. This is not about a sales methodology. It's also not about me selling anything, right? This is, just I've learned so many difficult lessons over my career, and I don't believe that people are talking about these sort of tactical things enough. So, this is all my opinion. You can agree with it, not agree with it, doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to share any of the templates, happy to share my calendar, which I will at the end. You can schedule time. It's probably not a great idea for us to spend time talking about specific deals, because I really wouldn't have the context, but more than happy to do that separately. And so what gives me any credibility, it's not so much that I'm just really fantastic, which I am, but 20 some odd years enterprise technology, the last 15 years spent selling to Fortune 1000 companies across healthcare, insurance, financial services, telecommunications. Started out in what I call the plumbing, which is the infrastructure that sits underneath. How do we process, automate? How do we do things better, faster, cheaper for the company and the consumer, the end user, but have also a ton of experience at the critical application level, selling ERP systems, HR systems, customer service systems, financial management systems. So I have above the line and below the line experience. And yes, through the course of 15 years, I've sold a shit ton of deals, millions and millions of closed dollars, but I have probably lost, 40 times that amount in deals that where the wheels had fallen off. So this is really about those painful learnings. And if it helps any of you avoid them, not have to go through the pain, then I've done what I've come here to do. So we're going to go through 3 things. My set of golden rules, there's 7 of them. We're going to run through each of them. These are so important to me, things that I've learned as unequivocal truths in 15 years. They are printed and pasted on my window right in front of me. I can see them every single day. And every time I get on the phone or interact with a customer, I reference those and make sure that I'm in line. We're going to talk about how I build pipeline, the things that you should be doing. Some apply to you, some don't apply to you, but this is all about logistics and process and heavy lifting. So it's the steps and stages that you need to go through to get a signature on a contract. That's what this is about. And then we're going to talk about how do we get those deals to closure. They're really complex, and getting your champion to say yes is really just the very beginning of a long and arduous set of steps that we got to go through. Okay, we're going to go through each of these individually, but they're all equally important. These are my 7 things that are my gospel, basically. And you know, I can say over the years that I've been selling that regardless of the size of the company that I'm working with or trying to sell to, these are true every single time. Okay, let's start at the top, qualifying out. Number 1 job in sales, and people are going to tell you different, absolutely without a shadow of a doubt, you need to qualify deals out of your pipeline. Think about it. Every moment that you spend on an activity for somebody who is ultimately not going to buy, or the buyer is taking your time, money, resources away from somebody who's going to buy. We don't get enough shots. It's complicated enough in B2B to get in front of the people that are going to buy. You do not have time to waste on people who are not going to buy. So you need to push yourself to understand what actually is the buying signal. And you do that by asking again and asking again. And we're going to get into that. And you need to force yourself. It's hard. We all fall into this, I do, is hearing only what I want to hear, right? I need, if somebody is, you know, trying to give me the soft brush off, I need to be able to hear that and make peace with it and move on, right? Ask the questions, be brave, be strong, know that your product is valuable, and optimize the very limited number of at-bats that you get, rather than spending it on non-buyers or tire kickers. Okay, this one, I learned this over and over and over again. I got kicked in the teeth on this so many times. I'm surprised I can even chew solid food. But this is particularly important for technical salespeople. Nobody cares about all the bells and whistles in your product. All that person that you're talking to, whether it's business or to IT, care about whether your product can solve the exact problem that they're dealing with, right? And so every interaction that you have with a customer, any contact, everything that you say has to directly address the problem that they're solving. No more, no less. No, let me just show you this cool thing, or no, we're releasing this. If it doesn't address the problem that they're solving and you can articulate it without buzzwords, should you be talking about it? Because think about it, all you're doing is negotiating against yourself, right? 9 times out of 10, what happens is you talk about all these really fabulous things, and yes, they are fabulous, right? But what you're leading the customer to question is this too much product for me, right? is the money that I'm planning to spend on functionality that I'm never going to use, right? So you want to make sure that you're always focused. And I referenced what's called the STP model. I learned this years ago out at Boeing, and it stands for Situation, Target, Proposal. And you need to be constantly validating that with your customer. Situation is, hey, Mr. Customer, here's what I hear you saying about what's going on, right? This is the problem that you're trying to solve. Is that true? Has that changed? Has it evolved? So forth and so on. Target is, this is what you, Mr. Customer, believe you need to get to. This is what the end state looks like that's going to solve this problem and make you a hero. And the third thing is proposal, right? Hey, Mr. Customer, do you realize there's a better way to get this done, right? Not my product, but there is a way to get you to where you need to go so you're a hero. And then, oh, by the way, my product does just that. You see what I mean? You're getting them to validate what it is that they're looking to do. You get to get them to clearly articulate where they want to go. And then you get to convince them that there's a way to do it better, faster, cheaper by using your product, right? And this is, to the last one, is constantly validating that what you heard before is still true today, right? Because things move, people move, money moves, everything's always moving. And so having that validation up front helps you both start at the same exact place. Okay, this one, again, if I had it, I got kicked in the teeth so many times on this. This time I can't even believe I can drink anything. But if someone says to you, I'm the buyer, it is 100% likely that they are not, unless you are talking to the CFO or the CEO of the company. The person who can pick up the pen and sign the contract is your buyer. There's no way around it, right? Everybody has a boss, whether you're a public company, a private company. My company is the same way, right? I am the buyer, whether they're talking to my technical people, whether they're talking to marketing folks or whatever. A deal will not get closed unless I say it happens. I know my numbers, I know my budget, I know what sales I need to drive. They may not be making the decision to move forward with your product, but they can't get that deal signed. They don't have the power to put pen on the paper. So throughout the process, you need to know who does have the power to put the pen to paper, who does have the power to whip out their credit card and type it into the thing and hit send. You also need to know in B2C, which is very, very different, or B2B, which is very different from B2C, is who else has a say. Because if you were, there are always going to be multiple people who have influence to the buyer, the CFO, let's say, who say, yes, I validate this. Yes, I've done my homework. Yes, I've compared this to other vendors. Yes, I've done a security review. And you need to know who those people are. You need to be building relationships with them, because your deal will not get closed unless you have their validation that they go back to the CFO and say, yes, I put my stamp of approval on this, right? In certain cases, there are folks within the chain, usually at the VP or the SVP level, who have some level of signing power. That means, at the SVP level, depending on the size of the organization, it might be up to $100,000 or $500,000. But as you go to the VP level, I'm working with one right now who has $60,000 to play with. But even in those cases, even though they can use their credit card to buy, or they can put their signature on the contract, there are still other people along the road who you have to get involved in the process to get them to be allowed to sign that contract. So knowing how to get there, what the complete buying cycle is. Do you need to be onboarded as a vendor? Do you need to go through a CISO security review? Do you need, what's the purchasing process, the procurement? What if you're doing a master license agreement, master license and service agreement, how do you engage with legal? What's their red line process? How long does it take? All of those things that you have to get your arms around in order to get your deal closed. Okay, here's an example. This is a big company. Arguably, it's not the people the size, but there were one or two of you that are talking about going the enterprise route. But this is an offshoot of Xerox. And what it represents, you're going to want to build this for every company that you're working with and keep it in your CRM. Obviously, it's an organizational chart. The people in the orange are the people representative of folks that I have relationships with, people that will pick up the phone when I call, right? And this is really important because when your sales reps or yourself are communicating, it's obvious, right? Where does this person sit on the hierarchy of decision making, right? Are they going to help me move a deal forward from an operational perspective, or are they actually going to make a decision? And this is a real company that I worked with. I worked with them for a year, and in a account review with my leadership at the time, let me go to the next one. I don't know why this is stuck, but the heck. Let me just do this. Maybe if I go this way. I don't know why this is. I don't know what's happening here. Hang on. For some reason, I'm frozen. Which slide are you guys seeing?
Cell 2 and cell width is what I'm seeing.
Slide 9.
Okay. Maybe if I jump back a little bit. I don't know why I can't get to that next slide. Hang on a second. That one's really important. Just copy and paste it here. That'll work. I do not know why this is not going to share. Okay, well, I'll just talk you
You
through
can
it.
see it from here. This is perfect. We can see this
Yeah,
now.
I'll just talk you through it. So if you can see over here, maybe this is what the slide looks like. And I'll send these out so you can see it. There's all sorts of lines here that show how they're connected with. And this is that company that we just looked at. This enterprise automation suite was the deal that I was working, multi-million dollars, working directly with the CTO. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. But what I was trying to communicate to my leadership was, and you'll find this, is there are people that you're selling to, and there are people within an organization, and there's people that are selling with. And of the deals that are in the sell to space, what this slide illustrates is that all of these deals, even though I was trying to close enterprise automation, are all connected in some way. So the work that I was doing over with the CFO and financial operations had influence over the enterprise automation, because they would be taking part of the services that we were putting in place. And so they ultimately had a sell, or they had an influence over my other deal. Different people, different decision process, different leaders, different requirements, but ultimately I have deals in my pipeline, 5 or 6 of them, that make up my forecast that I'm trying to push forward. Now, but the other thing it shows is the bottom, which is the cell width. Because I have contacts that I know in all of these other deals, I need to be able to use them to influence the deal that I'm trying to close at any given moment. And so what I was trying to illustrate here to my leadership is the connection between the guy who runs insurance to why the enterprise automation deal is important to him. So I need to make him a champion of mine. So he calls up the CTO and says, you got to do this because it gets me this. See what I mean? And so if you take a moment, a quiet moment, to sit down and think through what is the organizational structure and what is the organizational structure and how are all of these threads that you're pulling on connected, you're in a much better space to start to move all of them forward at the same time and accelerate the deal that you're trying to close in the short term. Make sense? I am totally stuck. I'm just going to delete that slide. I do not know why that's happening. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah. Let me just go up one. Okay, I'll just talk about this. So this one was the one called the work back plan. This is magic, folks. I'm telling you, this is going to save your life. The notion here is that you're putting in place with your champion a plan of all of the things that need to occur to get to the end state, which is the bottom, fully executed contract, right? Doesn't matter how big or how small the item is that you need to get done. You and your contact need to sit down over beers, sit down in a conference room or a Zoom call and just work it out. And it does a bunch of things. Number one is what I'll tell you is most of the time when you're dealing with somebody at the lower levels, they have no flipping idea how to close a deal within their own company, right? They don't understand what the stages are. They don't know who the people are. They don't know how long it takes or whatever. This forces them to be able to figure it out. It also makes them a champion, right? They can go to their boss and say, when their boss says, where the heck is this deal? What are we doing? Are we going to make it on time, budget, resource, blah, 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 blah. He can whip this out. She can whip this out and say, look, here's what we're doing. Target date is this. These are all the steps. This is who owns it. This is the status. And this is the notes, right? This is an Excel spreadsheet. Happy to share it. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Doesn't even have to be in a system. It's just, you want your person to get emotionally involved in this enough to where you can set recurring meetings and refer to it. All right, this is another hard and fast rule. No matter who you're selling to, what size company, you as a founder know how much revenue you have to generate to operate your company. This is nothing but math. There's no art in this at all. It is, I absolutely, in order to sustain my business, must drive X dollars, right? And you need to always have 3 times that number in real deals in your pipeline, because a third of them or 2/3 of them are going to fall away or push to the next quarter. And what I'm talking about is real deals. There's 3 kinds of deals in my world: commit, most likely, and upside, right? Commit is greater than 75% likelihood that it's going to change with it or close within your time period. When you tell the way I was brought up is if I tell my sales leader that this deal is going to close, it's a commit deal, come hell or high water, that deal better freaking close, or I better have a deal that's going to take its place for the same dollar value, or I'm going to lose my job, right? Most likely is greater than 50%. There's still work to be done, but closing signs are there. We're well within the process. Bluebirds or upsides are things that you 9 times out of 10 you don't really tell anybody about. They're, in your pocket, your secret weapon, that if you really hustle, that you might be able to pull them in and be a hero at 150% of your number or whatever. Or they may take the place of a most likely if your most likely starts to fall apart, right? This is not about hope, and you need to get your forecast process buttoned up yesterday. This is mine. I'm an old lady. I use spreadsheets. There are thousands of tools out there in the world that you can use. If you're doing HubSpot, a part of their sales thing, they have a forecast process. For me, a good old-fashioned spreadsheet does the thing. You'll see down below, it's broken out by quarter, by company, what the total contract value is, whether it's a commit most likely. That feeds up into the top. That will ultimately get me to the 3 times pipe that I need. Right? Happy to share this template with you as well if you want it, or you can make your own. It's really simple, but it's imperative that you have some sort of spreadsheet or snapshot that tells you that you're at a 3 times pipe. And if you're building a sales team, what I would suggest to you, happy to talk about this too, because I've led operations, is you need to oversubscribe their quota by 25%, everybody, because some reps are going to make it, some reps are not, some deals are going to come through and some are not. So if you know you need to hit a certain number for your company to operate, you need to be covering yourself through forecast and through quota allocation. Okay, so getting to the next step only, this is really important and very hard for a lot of us, me included, is every time you're talking to a customer, and Jag, you and I were talking about this, is one of the topics that led to this, is the only thing you need to be focused on is exactly what you need to do to get to the next step. And this is why this work back plan is so important, because you and your champion know what that next step is, right? The goal of an interaction, a demo, a presentation, a conversation, a dinner, beers, whatever, conference, is not to get to the end of the process, not to get to the signing of the document. It's to get to the very next thing that opens the door to you moving your deal forward. So it takes patience, it takes awareness, work your work back plan, tackle multiple of those at the same time. If you know you need to go to a CISO review, I'll give you another example. Aflac, working a huge deal with them, had to go, part of their buying process is the SaaS platform had to go through a CISO review under their security office. The CISO process alone took a year to complete, a full year. And if I didn't know that ahead of time and be able to adjust my forecast accordingly, I would have been in big trouble. But knowing that ahead of time, you're able to hold your champion, and you need to work your work back plan with them. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the how do I build pipeline. Different for everybody, different for every company, different for your product, different for whoever you're selling to, size, market, whatever. But to me, I'm a very logical person. That's why me working in business process automation really suits me personally, because I'm an executor, right? I want to have it laid out and I want to do it. And so what that means is there's all this stuff I have to do up front in order to get myself ready to make a meaningful contact with somebody. And the one piece that I want to point out to you here is number 4, and give you an example, is to use all the channels at your disposal. So these companies are complicated. Not only are there lots of people internally that you need to be building relationships, there's lots of people externally. And by channel, I don't just mean engage them on social media or Twitter or, send them emails and stuff. I'm talking about a greater thing. So I'll give you an example. All of these companies, particularly if you're in enterprise, even some of the smaller ones, engage with systems integrators, the Cognizants, the Tatas, the Capgeminis, whatever. And I'll use Liberty Mutual, the number 5 largest insurance carrier in the entire world, right? They are my nemesis client. For 10 years, I have tried to sell to Liberty Mutual. They're in my backyard. I know thousands of people that work there. I have never sold to Liberty Mutual, and I'm really, really bitter about it, right? But what I do know about them is that Cognizant has 700 technical consultants on the ground every day at Liberty Mutual. And Cognizant has one guy who owns their entire relationship. So if I know that guy, right, from Cognizant, they know everything about Liberty Mutual. They know the strategic imperatives. They know where the money's going. They know everything. And so if I know that guy, then I too know everything. I also know that Ernst & Young is their corporate auditor, right? I have worked with Ernst & Young, and many, many of my good friends are partners at Ernst & Young. So I call up my buddy over at Ernst & Young and say, hey, pull up your fancy schmancy, internal system and tell me who the account manager is for Liberty Mutual and make a connection for me. So when I talk about using channels, think creatively about, who you're connected with elsewhere that can help you potentially figure out who the influence are at your company that you're targeting. Okay. And then, the final thing is just always remind yourself that when you're talking to people, to stay focused on just the problem that they're trying to solve. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but this just shows you how I start the process. I break my ideal customer prospects because, I'm in childcare, right? Every company on the face of the earth is a target of mine, right? But I have an ideal customer profile. I start with 10 of those companies. I work them for, I don't know, a month. But before I go and interact with them, I do all of these things, right? I know that company like the back of my hand. I have a straw man organizational chart. I know the contacts that I want to talk to across every single line of business. I know all the contacts that can get me there. I've followed them and commented on things that they've written on LinkedIn and Twitter. I've gotten my name out there. I set up Google alerts. I'm reading magazines and sending emails that say, have you seen this? Or does this apply to you? For everybody that I ask for a warm intro, I write them a ghost email, 2 to 3 sentences, and send it to them and say, here you go. Change what you want to change, but could you use this as an intro to XYZ? My initial outreaches are short. I state, why I'm contacting them, the problem that I've seen at another company, and would they be willing to meet with me to share their perspective? That's it. And I know what I'm going to ask. My next ask is going to be, would you be open to me talking to you about what we're doing and getting your opinion, right? Not will you sign a contract with me? What do I need to do to get to the next step? And everything, absolutely everything for me, because I'm a control freak, goes into a CRM, because before every single meeting, I go back through all the notes. I know what the person's kids' names are. I know they were trying to get in this school. I know they went to the Dominican Republic on vacation. I know the dog's name. You know, I talk about, you know, what mutual friends we have. Oh, I talked to this person this week and they told me to tell you hi. All of those things are important. And if they're not in one place, I lose my mind. Okay, meetings, same thing. Know what you're going to ask. The only important thing here is follow the keep it simple, stupid methodology. If you're giving a demo or a slide deck, there is one thing only, one message that you want to deliver for one slide or one demo screen, and nothing more. That's it, one thing, because you don't want to introduce a negotiation against yourself. If that one thing says, and you literally say this in the meeting, this is how I solve this for you. This is why this is important for you, right? You are keeping it narrowly focused on the problem that they are trying to set. And again, as I said earlier, I start every meeting with, here is what I understand, and here is what I hope to get today. Is that true, Mr. Customer? And I'm, you know, it took me a while to get here, but I'm humble, right? If I don't know something, you know, I say, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to get back to you. But you can trust me that I'm going to get back to you. I'm honest. And I teach my kid the same thing. Trust and integrity are the only two things that you have, because your buyer is well beyond where they were before. They are well down the sales cycle. You are only there because they've done their research on you and they like what they see, and they just need convincing so that they can go to the ultimate buyer and say, this is what I want to buy. Make sense? And you know, the only thing I'll say here is the work back plan is your friend. That's how you close deals. You get it mapped out, you make them emotionally attached to it, and you guys work it together, and your deals will get done. That's it. That's all I got. How was that?
Amazing.
Zeb, Pete, how are you? How do you hear me preaching this all the time? How did I do?
I agree with Jake. I thought it was amazing. And what I liked about it, it was like the strategic plus tactical, right? Like I think a lot of times in a session like this, you get deep into the theory of how something should happen and not the actual tactical steps of like, no, do it in this order. So Carleen, we really appreciate it. Great job.
Awesome. Thanks. So do we have time? We have we're over by 5. I can stay, if you guys can stay, if you have some quick questions for me, but I will, Jag, send this to you. You have the recording. I'll also share, like I said in the beginning, my contact information and my calendar. I too have a business that I'm trying to build. So should we find time, happy to talk about specific deals, deal structure. You know, if you're stuck on something, happy to help. But I'll take a couple questions if you want. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. First time I've actually used this feature. So on the work back plan, right? I hope I'm pronouncing it right. How many meetings or how long have you known the potential, your champion, before you get together and make the work back plan? Is it after a couple of meetings? Is it after one meeting? How much rapport do you build with them before you say, okay, looks like we're doing this and I need you now to all help work with me here to the entire organization to adopt this.
Yeah, that's an exceptional point that I totally forgot. So thanks for reminding me. So yeah, what you're getting at is, you certainly don't walk in the door on the first meeting and sit down and say, okay, let's map this out to closure. Right?
Yeah.
And you really, this is part of the art of it, is you really need to be attuned to, how strong that champion is,
Mhm.
where their head is, if they're saying, even if they're not the buyer, they're saying, oh my God, yes, I gotta have this. This is totally, gonna fix everything that's wrong in my life. And that is the point where you say, look, I have a tool that I've used elsewhere that has been instrumental in helping people in the organization. And it's just, you're going to have to understand where you are and how strong your relationship is, whether or not they're at a comfortable point. And I think, it's going to be a while. You're going to do a bit of dog and pony stuff ahead of time. But, Pete can attest to this. When you're getting it to a point with your champion where they're texting you, or, you're going out to beers together, or you're, mocktails, whatever, or, whatever it is, that's really a relational thing where the two of you are comfortable enough. Ironically, one key indicator is when the person that you're dealing with starts to complain to you about how slow their company is, or how hard it is to get something done. That's a really good indicator that they trust you. Right? Pete, you got that cooking right now. So
Yeah, and that's probably the perfect point to share that plan with them, because you're like, okay, you're frustrated. Hey, check this out, right?
yeah. I keep
Okay.
I keep
Thanks for the indication. Yeah, sorry.
beating Pete over the head about the work back plan too. So he's no stranger to that. Anybody else have a quick question? Nobody?
So I have a question. I guess it's tied to the work back plan, but if you haven't heard back from somebody, let's say you haven't quite, decided the work back plan, but it might be something that you want to propose next to move things along. You haven't heard back from somebody, say, for a month, 6 weeks, the last correspondence was that they, had a bereavement in the family, they've been out of the office, they're back. Like, how do you kind of re-engage? What are the potential tactics around re-engagement?
Yeah. This is really sort of the crux of what you and I had talked about previously. And you certainly don't want to come across as the nag, or that you're desperate or anything like that. I think, as you and I exchanged yesterday, there's ways to frame up that conversation where you make it easy for them to say, to engage with you. And if you've never read a book called Never Split the Difference, it's by Chris Voss. I've been through every methodology, every negotiation, training, book reading, whatever. It is far and away the absolute 100% best negotiating book that I've ever read in my entire career. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. But
so actually he's in New York tomorrow. He's coming to my office to do a session.
Oh my God, how lucky are you?
Yeah, we're lucky.
Oh, I wish I could be there. I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. But his whole thing is ask questions that get your contacts to say no, not yes. Right. So when I responded to you yesterday, Jag, you said, how do I re-engage this guy? And my response to you was very similar to what you had written, but I was, a little bit more descriptive and said, do these dates at these times work for you for a call? Right. And if they don't, the answer from your contact is no, they do not. Which then, or better yet, they come back and say, no, none of these work, but Tuesday at 10 a.m. work. Right. What you're trying to do is to get to the point where they're thinking about, oh, I've totally screwed over Jag. I really need to get back. This is important. She set these dates out and they don't work. Let me set it out for her. Right. And when you're on the call, Jag, what I would say through the course of the conversation, maybe at the end, is introduce this concept of a work back plan, show him a template of it, and say, I've used this to great success. Can we do this together? I'll come to you and sit in your office and do this. Right. And if you're feeling comfortable at that level with that contact, right? But you're at the step right now when I talk about what is it that you need right now. What you need is to commit him to getting back on the phone with you, right? Setting that on the calendar, getting a meeting, and then you get into that meeting and you want feedback on the data that you shared, right? And then you also want to introduce the work back plan. So I think those would be two great things to try to accomplish when you get them on the phone.
That's super. And so I have another question.
Yeah.
When, sometimes, it takes it, I guess it's just the longevity, the timing, months go by, and sometimes I'm just like, they're not interested. How do you kind of get out of that? Or how do you know that they're just not interested?
Yeah, that too is exceptional. I think one thing is you, and this just comes with time, you have to get comfortable around things not moving quickly. I'll give you another example. That the guy that you're going to talk to, Darren Jag, I worked a year on a deal with his organization, the CEO of the line of business. Darren worked for him. We worked a year. Ultimately, the deal fell apart because they got a new CIO, right? But I lost my train of thought, but
Getting comfortable with things not moving quickly.
oh yeah, okay. So one of the things which is really sort of encompasses everything that we talk about is shit takes a long time in these companies. And it's not, I had another boss say to me, it's not always about you, Carleen. Like the world, you are not the center of the universe. These people have other jobs, they have other priorities. They have budgets they need. We're going into Q3, and they're trying to finalize projects that they got funded for and so forth and so on. It's not always about you. So you have to be comfortable with the fact that these things are going to take time. And what I'll share with you is regardless of how big the company I was selling to, whether they're a startup all the way up to enterprise, you should plan in every interaction that from the start of a sales cycle to the end of a sales cycle, meaning a signature on a contract, will take you 9 months, right? So technical founders or non-B2B people who say, oh, I'm going to accelerate the sales cycle. Listen, you could do cartwheels in the parking lot naked and you're not going to move an enterprise company faster than what's happening. There are always deals in front of you at legal that are bigger, more strategic. There's always, this is what I want to tell you with Darren is he worked for a company, Mercer, who's a subsidiary of Marsh McLennan, who's big, massive in the insurance industry. But we both knew he had been there so long. Every single November, they had a corporate reorganization. Every year. And that fell right smack in the middle of our deal. Right? So essentially I had to start over. We, Darren and I, had to start over with different people every November, right? So it's, if you understand that these deals are long, that 9 months is probably a good average, maybe you get it to 6. And as a founder, it's really important to remember that when you're talking to investors. If you go into an investor call and you say to them, because they're going to ask you, you know, what's your sales cycle in B2B? You know, they're traditionally long and stuff. If you say to them, oh, our product is easy to buy and we anticipate it's a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, you're going to get laughed out of the room, because it doesn't have anything to do with you, you know, how awesome you are or how awesome your product is. It's just the way that enterprise accounts work. Patience is a virtue.
So we shouldn't assume that we're not solving a hair on fire problem because we want to solve a hair on fire problem that they have, right? We should not assume that we're not doing that. They just are used to doing things the old way. And until you're enough embedded, then yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so hair on fire is a good example. So I didn't talk about this enough, but I don't think, but every company has a funding cycle, and that funding cycle, you know, as I said, starts now in Q3. And what they're doing is they're looking at what are they going to do next year. So if you have a deal that you believe is going to close in 2023, and it is not part of what has been chosen in 2022 to be funded, funding hasn't been allocated to solve the problem that your product solves, it is unlikely that your deal is going to close in 2023, right? But what the upside is that right now is the perfect time for you to secure funding for 2024, right? And that process usually concludes if they're on a annual fiscal plan by November, before Thanksgiving. And this is where all the teams go to a funding board, they present their proposal, a business case, ROI, they've done their vendor research, they've done CISO reviews, they've done all of that, and they go and they present to the board and they say, I need $1 million, I need $500,000, I need $50, right? And the board chooses what's going to be funded next year, right? So, you know, assuming that you've got a deal that is not strategic in nature for this year, the money just isn't going to be there. It's just not, unless you know, go to those two exceptions and you have enough buy-in where either off-cycle funding approval is an option, or your buyer's organization have funds that are expiring. And you just need to figure that out. And Jag, to you, as you're doing that work back plan with your contacts, if you don't know the answer to that, just ask, you know, just ask. Because what they do from there, if you think about it from their perspective, they say, okay, I just got $2 million to spend on these 3 projects. Okay, I have this many people, time, money, and resources. That's what it's all about. I have this much time to deliver. I have this many resources. How do I break that down in all of 2024 to deliver on that project? Because by and large, their KPIs are tied to that delivery. Monetary compensation in the form of bonuses are tied to the success of those projects, right? So it starts with the funding process, which ends in November, and then it goes into the planning process for the following year. Does that make sense? Is that helpful, Jag? Okay. Tico, what do you got?
First of all, I got a bunch of gratitude. Thank you so much, Carleen, for everything that you showed us today. And second of all, yeah, I just wanted to second that on the part of the non-technical and technical founders and people around the business end of things getting desperate about stuff. The only parallel I can make right now is like when you're trying to sell something, you're at the mercy of the people that receive your proposals. And what you made was a very interesting way of streamlining everything so that you remove all of that noise and just center yourself in what matters. And even so, be very mindful of how long a deal can take, because a lot of people are like, dude, you're not working hard enough, and you just can't quantify everything as if they were lines of code, as if they were items on a sprint, big rocks that you need to move, whatever it is. Because again, that's the human element, and some humans are rotten to the core, some others are slow to respond, some others are sure to respond, but you know, they just
Yeah.
take a little nudging or whatever it is.
Yeah, thanks for validating that. And the other piece I would add is all of these people have other jobs, right? They got a
Yeah.
real job they do, right? Like when I work with the operations people under a CFO, these are also the payroll people. They got to pay payroll, or they got to balance the books, and they have to marshal this project to success, right? Because they're the business owners. So I don't know. What I'll say to you is I said a lot of you can't and you shouldn't and you don't and it doesn't. But I will tell you, I absolutely love the strategic nature of B2B sales. I cannot stand B2C sales, right? I cannot. It's too much work. I can't do it. But I just love the nature of being able to sit down and think about this holistically, because there is a solution and a path for absolutely everything. And if I'm focused on the problem that's being solved, I can craft a story, right? It doesn't matter that I'm competing against IBM or Oracle or SAP or any other startup that's 2 years ahead of me. I can get this done, and it's just a matter of being thoughtful and mindful about it, and honest with myself and with my clients. So this really is something that I'm very, very passionate about. Surprisingly, not the business that I'm building, but there you have it. Maybe the next one.
You're so generous, Carleen. We've gone over. I could keep talking for hours.
Yeah.
But it's so kind of you to kind of make yourself available for like tactical questions. That would be great. And feel free to send me, the deck and the plan, and I can just forward it to folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jack, I know you're deep into a deal that you're trying to get closed. So, if we can find a time for 30 minutes on a weekly basis, or bi-weekly basis, I'm more than happy to help you navigate that. So if that's something you wanted to do, you're welcome to schedule that with me.
That's so kind of you. Super.
And
Anything
even
else?
better if we do it over cocktail hour. That's all I gotta say.
Oh yeah, can we do like Zoom cocktail hour?
Yeah, well, it's funny because Pete and Zeb, we met in the launch program. We have cocktails every Friday night.
Oh, amazing. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll join in.
Yeah, they're good dudes, and the cool thing is this is the other thing I think about founders, and you probably have the same. You got to find your peeps, right? Like, Zeb is a legal guy, right? Like, and a tech guy, and Pete's over here on the manufacturing side. He doesn't know anything about business, right? And I'm the salesperson, right? So we all sort of swim our lane and help each other, and we're all sort of high functioning
You
alcoholics
should
as
all
well.
found your own startup. You'd
Yeah.
nail it, the three of you.
Yeah, right. All right, I'll let y'all go.
Perfect.
As I said, my contact information is in there. Really, truly, and I do mean this. If I have the time, I will talk through, just be a listening ear, shoulder to cry on whenever you need.
Yeah, loads of cheers and sales. Loads of
right.
cheers on there. Thank you so much, Carleen. Really appreciate it. Have
All
a
right.
great